Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Welcome to the Game Week 2 pod of the FPL Wire. I'm your host, Zoph, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Late Riser and Pras. How's it going, guys?
Doing good, Zoph. Is that a new pair of spectacles I see on you? I just noticed.
That's my backup pair. Frankie broke the other one.
It looks good. It should be the first choice pair. Looks good on you, man. Looks good on you. How are you doing? Enjoyed that first weekend of football?
Yep, especially the Sunday. First 30 minutes, I was just jumping up the room, wondering what is Poch doing? Salah has so much space. We're playing a back three. What are you doing with Colville isolating? But very encouraging second half. I loved how we grew into the game. It was just good to look forward to watching Chelsea play again. It was so reinvigorating, I can't tell you.
I know. And
you
now
must
you're
have the same feeling. Same feeling for you.
Same feeling.
Monday night, same feeling. What the hell is going on?
And now we're sitting with I'm saying we because we're implying we're Chelsea fans. Best midfield in the league, I reckon now. Like Enzo Casido and Lavia as a backup. Are you kidding me? With Poch as the perfect kind of manager who knows how to, develop these players without European distraction in the middle of the week. Like, Jesus, like you guys are set up for a good season. Pras, how are you doing, man? How was Fest and enjoy the first week of football?
Fest was great. I've got lovely stories, not all that can be shared here, but it was nice. It was met so many people that you sort of interact with online and people who watch videos and you've never actually interacted with, and they show up and they know the stuff that you do. So it was very nice. Obviously, season kickoff happened on Friday. Weekend football was great. I mean, it's just so exciting. I mean, us watching it for 20 plus years, nothing beats like the first kickoff whistle when the season starts. It used to be Community Shield, but we're not in it, as frequently these days. But yeah, football is back, and it's all very exciting. And today was the England's women's victory as well against Australia. So it's all very good.
Nice. How was FPL for you?
FPL was good. I think everyone's off to a good start. I mean, a lot of decisions where people were debating, should I go Mbumo or Mitoma? Well, both returned. Should I go Jackson or Watkins or Pedro? Both returned. Maybe Jackson was the anomaly there. So I think pretty much people did well, except the Arsenal guys and what happened close to the deadline. But we'll talk about that. How was it for you guys?
Good. Let's the elephant in the room. I think let's address that first in terms of. I mean, I've seen a lot of people talk about the, leaks, etc. that come in. But my first reaction to that was, I mean, weren't you?
It says we are connected. We should be back now. Let's just wait for the chat to catch up and see any comments. Guys, let us know if you can see and hear us fine. We had some power issues at my end, but it's all resolved
It's
now.
back.
Yep.
It's back. I'm just waiting for everybody's sound. Okay, guys.
Yeah, stream is back. Everyone's saying.
What a time
Okay.
to drop out too, right? Right when we talk about the
We're
team.
talking about the servers. People are listening.
Yeah. So while on that matter, quickly getting back to it, I mean, I was simply like, why are you whining? Isn't this what happened last year? Yes, I mean, the scale of the news was different in terms of we're getting Saturday news on a Friday night now. But anybody who wants to be an engaged FPL manager in 2023 needs to know that the rule of the game is leaks are there. And it is what it is. Not much has changed. I was making this point earlier where 50, 60, 70% of the guys who were whining about the leaks, it was a little bit hypocritical because they were the same guys that had John Stones in their team and switched Stones out for a player that was playing. So, I mean, you're relying on your team for leaks and then whining about leaks. It is just what it is. You have to accept it and move on. There are many things I don't like about the game in 2023, but it just is what it is.
And there's no fix as well. Like people say, move the deadline further back. Like how far back? I mean, you got the news for Arsenal's game like 16 hours before. People say move the deadline to kickoff. Now, it may reduce the noise for the first game, but imagine your Saturday games that kick off at 12:30 p.m. and the deadline is 11. You'll get news for 3 p.m. games, all in a barrage. So it's sad. Like, I don't think anybody enjoys it, but that's the level of engagement that's needed. And if you're unlucky that you're busy at a time where something major drops, I guess you just have to suck it up. And I mean, luckily this time, all three of us reacted quick enough. I mean, I remember, your tweet in capital letters on switch Gabriel to Saliba or something of that order helped some and maybe some missed it.
Yep. And there's no conspiracy theory that we are getting fed information in this sort of Illuminati group. We saw Andy's stream. That's all it is.
Yeah. That really is all it is. And if you're paying attention on Twitter and Andy's stream in the last 10 minutes, if there is news that you're looking out for, that's all you really need, honestly.
Some sympathy, though, for people in different time zones. My brother's in New Zealand. He was telling me that I'm not going to wake up on a Saturday morning at 3-4 a.m. just to check these team news, right, and ruin my weekend. So it's tough for people in different time zones. I do have sympathy for that.
Absolutely.
For sure. I mean, the good part is the damage wasn't that drastic. That's all we're here to say. Right, let's lot of games to talk about. Let's get into it.
First with our sponsor plug.
Right, so Fantasy Football Scout, all the data that you see on the Scout is on our podcast is from the Fantasy Football Scout members area. Little Buddy tells us that there's a new members area due very, very, very soon. So you probably want to get in there now. And I mean, we've been using this for the last 4 years. You guys know that they've been supporting us for the longest time as well. It's the best time to become a member. Early season is when you'll really use this. And Zoph did an excellent video, by the way. Good job, Zoph. With the stat video on Monday. You already saw how he's using his custom tables to just get well versed with whatever happened on the weekend. It really takes that 10-15 minutes to just get up to date. You can get whatever data you want. So if you want to become a member, click on the links in the description below.
And also NordVPN. So I guess, we mentioned this last week. We've partnered up with these guys for basically your VPN needs. And if you need to sort of stream stuff that is outside your jurisdiction, that you want to change your library, I think it's a good way. But most importantly, it's for your privacy, it's for your security. If you're going online, I think having VPN is just sort of basic hygiene at the moment. And NordVPN has an excellent discount going on at the moment. And there is an exclusive deal, which is basically if you go nordvpn.com/the FPL Wire, you get 4 months additional free with that package. And the details will be in the comment section.
But let's get into it, guys. Now we have the numbers up from the weekend along with the XG. This is from Understat. Ella?
Yes, it's from Understat. And, instead of going order by order, I think we should discuss the big talking points and the big game up first. And I think the Sunday games, especially the Chelsea-Liverpool game, are the first point of conversation, especially with not many people owning Chilwell and him being left inside forward in the team. Your takeaways from that games off?
We played quite well, I think, in the second half, but I just want to caveat this is we played with a back three, which gave both the fullbacks more license than usual. We do expect Chilwell to be very attacking. We spoke about it on our defensive pod, is what we saw in preseason, but we should temper our expectations slightly. He won't be playing that inside forward role, just hanging off the last centre back as much. But also worth noting that he's not taking as many set pieces as we saw in preseason. Enzo is taking a lot. And I think what's going to happen is there are going to be 4 or 5 options in this Chelsea team. Like somebody was asking me about Enzo at 5.2. Good option, but again, he might be the 4th or 5th best option in the Chelsea team. So you have to pick and choose going forward for the run. Who's the one to get? Very impressed with Jackson. Made a lot of runs, lots very central runs also. Didn't go as wide as I thought he would. My initial thoughts was that he might not be a striker at the end of the window. We might sign somebody else. But looking at the incomings that have come, Lavia, Sacedo, I need to get that pronunciation right. And
Casedo,
exactly. Casedo, and also now we're looking at possibly Olise. I don't think we'll be signing a centre forward now. We'll probably run with Broya and Jackson.
It's Todd.
But it's Todd.
I'll just say it's Todd. I'll just say that. Like, if I was to pick and choose, I'd probably get Jackson as my third Chelsea guy once the window is done, just to be sure that Todd hasn't had a change of mind for a second. That's the only thing I'd say. But let's circle back to the defense and Chilwell, right? I mean, after looking at game week 1, I think number 1 transfer target for anybody should be Ben Chilwell. I just don't see him as a pick that isn't going to suit your needs, that you're not going to want in a week or 2 unless he gets injured. He's just as obvious as it gets as a pick. Pras, what do you think?
I mean, it's a case of, we knew that Chelsea will be cheap, good, no European football. But you also add the fact that what you're seeing with Chilwell, I mean, it's incredibly forward. Even, he's always been the case, but it was ridiculous against Liverpool. And then you add the fact that they are embarking upon an amazing fixture run, top of the ticker until game week 8. They play Luton game week 3 at home, Nottingham Forest game week 4, then Bournemouth. I mean, it's a ridiculous run. So, in fact, what we should discuss is what more can you do in addition to Chilwell? Because Chilwell is just, if you don't have him, he should be in your team. Maybe it doesn't have to be this week, but by next week.
There's a question.
Just a question.
Go ahead, Alar.
I think we're probably going to ask the same question though. And
James
if you don't own Chilwell,
are we going James?
No, not
Chilwell?
James. No, I'm like, if you have S2 and Gabriel / Saliba, let's just say that. Do you shift? Which one do you shift to Chilwell?
Of course, Saliba. Gabriel. Both now have an issue, right? We'll talk about Arsenal. We'll talk about the fact that Arteta has gone into Pep mode this season. At least the quote suggests like this. And so if you have a defender that doesn't have the same upside, the plan was earlier Estupinan, at least for somebody like me looking at it. But I think if you have a Saliba, that's very limited attacking upside. So definitely him out if you have to.
I'm not sure about that. Like, I want to take a couple of weeks to assess that situation because...
Yeah, don't sell Saliba this week. I don't mean this week, but I mean eventually whenever you want to get.
Yeah, it's just an eventual question in terms of which one to sell for a Chelsea defender. Like, Estupinan looked incredible attacking wise, but I am not sure how many clean sheets Brighton are going to keep this year. Like, that is like Luton weren't good and they still conceded a fair amount of chances to Luton. And it's for sure now that they're going to, go ahead with Dahoud and Milner or Gross or Gilmore as their second midfield. It just isn't what McAllister and Caicedo used to be. And their defense also doesn't look as solid. So I haven't made up my mind quite yet. I'm 50-50 between whether losing Arsenal defender or Brighton defender called Estupinan for Chelsea defender. That's where I am. Zoph, you have a preference in terms of who do you think you sell first?
I think Estupinan is definitely a no sell. It's ridiculous value at 5 and not now 5.1. I think he's fixture proof, and I pretty much maintain that all of preseason. But I think we need to dial back the discussion, because the issue now is a lot of these players have also risen by 0.1 or fallen by 0.1. And that's going to block a lot of people out. So before we talk into these Chelsea centre backs, I think let's address what the Arsenal situation and the situation with Gabriel, Saliba, and with James, etc. Because it's very easy today, for example, for somebody to go, I think for Reece James rather, if you have, like, say somebody like Stones, right? Or has Stones already dropped also? I'm not sure. Stones dropped?
Stones hasn't dropped.
Like, see, if you have Stones, then you can possibly go to James, you can possibly can't go to Chilwell. So we need to weigh that up also for our viewers, right? To make that additional transfer to get the Chilwell, just because of that 0.1 is effectively 0.5 now. So
what is your view on James in the game? I mean, he was obviously not as far forward as Chilwell, but he was still reasonably forward.
He was very attacking, and what we expected, he's the one providing the creativity on the right-hand side in terms of the crosses. So I think he's a great option, but I'm still not sure whether he's the second or even the third best option, because Robert Sanchez also I'm finding very interesting now at 4.5. You have Jackson, who's getting into the team. Olise eventually might get into the team. I know he's injured. I don't know what his timeline is like. And with James, I'm still not very convinced regarding his fitness. I want to give it 2-3 games more. Worst thing I want to do is buy him, and then you have to sell him again in a few weeks. So that's where...
Not speculation.
Yeah.
Zoph, in terms of who the penalty taker is. And if James is the penalty taker, he becomes a no-brainer. But where are you at in terms of who you think Chelsea's penalty taker might be?
Personally, I'd like Enzo to take it.
But who do you think are the candidates? I think James is a top candidate. You
Definitely.
think it'll be Enzo, James?
He's been very good in whatever penalty shootouts he has taken penalties. I think James has to be up there. Enzo will be up there. Jackson, I don't think he's taken one even at youth level, so I'm not sure he's in the conversation. Who else? I think that's pretty much about it. I think it's either James or Enzo.
Like Sterling won't pull the seniority card. He did that. Like he wanted a lot of penalties at
he tried.
City. He tried at City. So that's not a conversation. And a lot of people are ruling it out, but I just want to put it out there for a vibe situation. I won't be surprised if Ben Chilwell takes it either. He's a clean striker of the ball. Like, I don't think I'll be surprised if Chilwell ends up taking it either. So that's where I am.
Chilwell can do no wrong. So let's talk about the Arsenal issue first, and then we'll talk about moving to either of these centre backs, right? Let's go with the quotes first, with Arteta told us.
So basically what Arteta has told us is that it's going to be a little bit of a horses for courses approach, in the sense that certain games require certain personnel and certain styles. And with Champions League coming, this is the evolution of Arsenal in his head. So there are various combinations. But then we're also hearing news that Timber might be out for a minimum 6 months. It probably could be the entire season as well. So just feel like Saliba being the only centre-back and then Tomiyasu playing on Timber's side doesn't feel convincing enough to me. I think if I'm looking at the game that's coming now, I do feel like Gabriel makes his way into the team. I think he's going to start this game. But definitely in terms of security of starts, it's looking a little dodgy. What do you take from it, Pras?
See, I think in the game, when Timber got injured, Tomiyasu did come in. But we have to remember it's home to Nottingham Forest. And basically what he was doing is Partey was inverting, Rice was there in midfield, Timber was helping in midfield. He said, look, I don't need more than 2 defenders or 3 defenders max. This won't be the case against Crystal Palace. So firstly, there's a whole, what you're talking, horses for courses. If it's a tougher game, even if it's at home, then Gabriel should definitely play. He's the second best centre-back at the club. But when you go again to Game Week 3, when they're home to Fulham, maybe again he goes for Partey inverting and then White, because left back cannot be Gabriel. So where does, who fits in on left back? It can only be either if Zinchenko is back or if Tomiyasu plays. So I would say Gabriel is okay against Crystal Palace. But then do you want to play him necessarily? Is he the best pick? So this is why I was actually thinking if, we're podding after the prices have changed. But if you wanted to make the move and you didn't have a Chilwell, I don't think it was the worst move when you put into the macro that next week we're unlikely to have a transfer to make. This week, if you had a Gabriel problem, you could have shifted to Chilwell. So I was a little bit more of you could go there if you wanted to. Equally, if you have a good first bench and you want to ride it out and play Gabriel one more week, there's a lot of teams with Salah who are playing 4 at the back and have a Gabriel. Just chance it. I think this week it's possible that Gabriel plays.
Yeah, and the one piece of information, from this entire setup that Arteta did, and there are conclusions that you draw from game week 1 and there are conclusions that you can't. I don't think you can draw conclusions in terms of Arsenal's setup from game week 1 because also they weren't that good. Like Arsenal struggled to convince, not a single big chance, 7 shots out of which 4 were shots from outside the box. So Arteta is still going to move around and figure out a system. So I don't think you can take anything away from Arsenal setup in game week 1.
I think you stick, if you can afford to move to a Chelsea wing back, you move. But I wouldn't be necessarily taking a hit unless if you want to make money for that. Go ahead.
If you have 0.5 in the bank, I'd move to Chilwell still. Like that's where I am.
No, you can't do that. You need 0.6 now.
He's risen now. So nobody has it. Unless if you have a million.
Oh, it's
in
a
the
5.6. Oh, okay. Got it. Oh, it's a tough ask for people to go there. But if there's a downgrade you like, I'd go there. I think it's just a player you're going to want in game week 3, if not game week 2. I'm that confident about it. So I wouldn't talk people out of getting Chilwell.
I would probably do it for free. Then if you need to make the money in something like that, do it for free in 3 rather than take a hit for it in 2.
Agree. Yeah. It's a way to West Ham.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I just want to add the reasoning to this conversation is, let's say if Chelsea don't even play 3 at the back, they're going to be playing 2 at the back with a double pivot of Enzo and Casido. If you're having that double pivot of Enzo, Casido, and if you add even Lavia, and both Enzo and Casido and Lavia are going to be playing the double pivot and Enzo is going to be playing the slightly more forward role, the wingbacks are going to get license to attack. So I don't see a world in which the wingbacks are not going to be given a license to attack, and that's why it's just an obvious pick.
You hear what they're calling it, right? They're calling that midfield LFC.
I heard that.
Oh, I'm going to get roasted, but it is what it is.
It's all right, man. It's a great change for all of us Chelsea fans on this podcast from what we witnessed last year. So
I was the only one who followed through with my Chelsea love. I have James and Chilwell already. Game week 1.
Yeah, sitting good there. I think most of us will want to dictate transfers towards those assets this week, next week, etc., etc. Yep. Right. Let's talk about other Chelsea assets. So Zoph is making the bold claim that he's not sure if James could be the second or third best Chelsea asset. Where are you on that, Pras?
I mean, I took the plunge, so I did it before knowing where we're going. I just think James will be in the top 3 or 4. So I can be convinced otherwise if Enzo takes the penalty in the next game, that maybe you can make a case of going Enzo as your 5th midfielder and almost having 8 attackers. So you could think about it like that. I think Jackson was amazing. One of the biggest pitfalls of people who aren't as engaged is basically to see that Jackson blanked 1-pointer, useless, Pedro is scoring a penalty and everything else. Jackson was amazing. Basically classic Haaland from last season, where what he did in the Community Shield, some people loved it. Some people saw this guy as useless. So I think I speak for the 3 of us where the takeaway was that he was absolutely incredible. After a long time, they have a proper striker. Whether he's on pens or not is irrelevant. If he plays Luton and Nottingham Forest at home, I want him in my team.
Same. I'm not worried. He was probably one of Chelsea's best players in that team, and Chelsea looked incredible in the last 16 minutes. By the way, I just want to say Enzo Fernandez's performance in that game is probably one of the most complete central midfield performances I've seen in a long time. He is ridiculously good. I don't think it would be a bold claim if we are going to say in 4 or 5 weeks as an established opinion that he's the best midfielder in the game in terms of real life football, not FPL. He was that good. He's incredible as a player. Just wanted to throw that in. I'm with you. Jackson looked incredible. It was, what did it for me was that lung-busting run in the 90th minute. He took on 2 players and almost made his way through a goal. The pass came to Mudryk and Mudryk scored it up, but that was just incredible. I think he's going to be a good pick. James, I think, is going to be a really good pick too. I think the Pochettino is going to be smart in terms of managing him. I think not having European football is really going to help him. And given the defensive double pivot /3 at the back formation, either or, that Chelsea go with, James is going to get license to attack. And James doesn't need the volume a Chilwell does, right? In terms of quality of delivery that James has into the ball, he's one of the best in the league. So that's a pick. The one pick I'm curious about is Colwill. And I think the reason why I'm thinking about Colwill is I'm a Salah owner, right? And I'm thinking about whether I want to lose Salah or not. And if I don't want to lose Salah, it means maybe not being able to go to a Reece James for my team. He looked decent on set pieces and his baseline bonus looked really, really strong. So I want to monitor the situation as well. That's where I'm. I think these are 4 options. I'm not quite convinced about Enzo as an FPL pick just yet. That's where I'm.
Yeah. Colwill is definitely our second choice centre back alongside Silva.
So you're like, don't be worried about minutes if I have to jump there next week.
Not at all.
All right. Cool.
So
Any other
Disasi
Chelsea
is not a pick then, right? Zoph? If they play 4 at the back, then Disasi is the one who misses.
Exactly. I think so.
Right.
Anything else?
Any other Chelsea?
There's nothing else, but they just summarize it for our viewers. If you have Gabriel and you can move to either of the Chelsea wing backs, do it, but don't take a hit for it. If you have Stones, move regardless.
Yeah. And if you have a KDB,
I'm not convinced.
Take the hit and do it.
Stones, let's see. I mean, we have another data point tonight. Obviously, they play Super Cup. I mean, we'll talk about it when we come to Man City. I think there's some moving pieces at Man City that we should discuss. So let's discuss Stones in that regard.
Cool.
Right. Liverpool, Chelsea's opponents. What did you make of them, Zoph?
I thought the midfield looked quite porous, and part of the reason Enzo looked so good is that he was allowed to play. Because they didn't really man mark him, and I think they're going to struggle to get the ball from back to front. The midfield really needs shoring up. But in terms of an attacking force, I liked what I saw from Salah. If he scores that offside goal, the entire narrative of the game could have completely changed.
Yep. I mean, the first 30 minutes, Liverpool were all over Chelsea. Then Poch made an adjustment. The first 30 minutes were a different game, and the last 60 minutes were a different game, in my opinion, in terms of what I saw. But Liverpool aren't going to face a midfielder named Enzo Fernandez next. So I'm still hopeful. They still have the attacking talent. That is, I'm expecting Jones to come back into the midfield until a replacement comes, because it's just too lightweight. I think you need to play Mac and Sobo as the 8s. You need to play either Gakpo, Jota or Diaz on the left and the other person in the center forward. I don't think you can go in with Mac as the 6 alongside Trent. I think Klopp will make that adjustment because they've looked better in preseason, which means that the competition for the other spots not named Mo Salah increases even more. So that's where I am. Liverpool's defensively don't look convincing at all to me at the moment. Not interested or not feeling like touching the defense until the fixtures improve is where I am. So, would you do Trent to Chilwell?
Yes.
Boys? I would too.
I mean,
probably after this week. After this.
After this week, right. Any other takeaways, Pras, from the...
I don't think we learned anything new on Liverpool. Salah is still Salah. If you wanted to see glass half full, you would say he could have walked away with a 13, 14, 15 pointer. If you wanted to see glass half empty, you could say 2 shots in the box. But that's Salah. I mean, he only needs 2 shots in the box. So I think they were both sides to the story. Actually, Diaz, had 4 shots in the box, looked actually very threatening, but that could be just the way, the shape, how it's one of those games. Correct. So you could look at it that way, but then Diaz couldn't, maybe doesn't even play the next game if Gakpo plays through the middle and Jota plays on the left. So I don't think you have any other picks there apart from Salah effectively. And so if you have him, you keep him. I guess the only question to discuss here is if you don't have him and now you're having nightmares, you've made your bed and you stick to it, right? I think that's our advice.
There was nothing to put anyone off captaining Salah if you've got him. But I think at the same time, from what we've seen, there's no need to rush to him either, because we don't know much about Bournemouth. From what I've seen, I saw limited highlights, seen the data, they're better defensively and offensively. And generally, Iraola's sides, they did very well against the top 6 opposition in La Liga last season. So again, this is a different Bournemouth side. We should temper our expectations. And I'll just ask this, even though I know the answer. Anything to take from Salah's tantrum?
No, I like it. That's all. The only thing that 1% is bothering me is Salah's linked with Saudi clubs. Like, I don't feel necessarily good about that, but I'm just hoping those are rumors and nothing else. But I think he's going to be starting. I think it's going to be fine.
What about Jota?
Happened multiple times.
Sorry, that's the thing. Jota, I'm not so convinced that he is. A lot of people do own Jota. I guess you obviously do own him. Don't sell him because this is the money fixture. But I wouldn't be buying him.
Yeah, I wouldn't be buying a Liverpool attacker not named Salah this week if I could help it, and I wouldn't sell whichever Liverpool attacker I plumped on game week 1 this week either. That's where I am.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
while we're on the Bournemouth topic, Zoph, I don't know if you had that table. You know, the one
I
with
do.
the game week 1 number of presses and how high up people play. So this is a chart that basically shows in game week 1 how high do you win the ball back, and so basically how high is your defensive positioning and how much counter press you're able to do. Look at Bournemouth. This is basically this new team that we will see. Now, again, glass half full, you can say they're going to lose the ball. They're going to be defending so high that Salah's just going to be running in all game. You know, something like what Newcastle did to Aston Villa. So there is a hat trick here. Or you can say that this isn't the Bournemouth that we're thinking from last season, and they're going to be super aggressive, and Liverpool will have to be on their game and not lose midfield battle. So again, another chart, whichever side you're on. But to me, when I read this, I was bloody scared that Salah is going to basically run behind the defense a lot. I mean, you remember Man City, he always does well against them because they don't care. They press up as high as they can, and he runs in behind and scores for fun. So I can see at least a goal with him running behind this Bournemouth defense.
West Ham, which isn't a team that is known for their attacking ability, had 13 shots inside the box. Bowen had 6 shots. So those stats just look real. Like, let's not, sit on the fence. I think if you made your bet game week 1 going on with Mo Salah, captain him.
100%.
Genuinely captain him.
100%.
Like, what are you even doing if you're not captaining him game week 1? You're sitting with the Haaland insurance. Newcastle did their bit in terms of making themselves look pretty decent. This is the time to roll the dice, and I don't want to sit on the fence.
No second thoughts.
No second thoughts.
That's good to
You have to take a chance.
You have to, it's absolutely the upside chasing move as you already own Haaland, but a lot of people will be put off. We saw what Haaland could do against even with those limited chances. And then Salah's output wasn't that good. So certain people will be put off, but I'm with you. You go for it.
Yeah. I mean, let's I think this is a good transition. Let's just move to talk about the City Burnley game. Haaland had 2 chances, but once De Bruyne got injured, City didn't really create that much. They genuinely didn't create that much. And if you're talking about a City team minus Mahrez, minus De Bruyne, and judging how Newcastle looked, I mean, yes, City are the functionally best looking team, and Haaland needs 1 or 2 chances to put them away. But I'm not having nightmares here, and I could regret this statement next time this week. But let's be objective here, in the sense that sleeping a little better knowing that De Bruyne is not supplying those passes to Haaland, because in the first 20 minutes, he looked really, really good as well. So that's where I am. One player I'm really curious about when it comes to Man City is Phil Foden, because I thought, and a lot of people are having this Alvarez and Foden conversation. I thought Foden looked it. Like, I was scared or on the edge as a Foden non-overrunner in the second half, because he looked really good. He was in and around the box. He was in and around the points. He was doing all the right things. Like, he's the Man City asset to monitor in the next 2 weeks. They're in the market for Paqueta, so we don't know what's going to happen with City's transfers. But
and Doku.
And Doku. Doku's a winger. So, like, we don't know what's going to happen, but I have a feeling that given De Bruyne's injury, Foden could get a look in. Pras?
Agreed. I think my first instinct is, there is this fool's gold temptation. XYZ is injured, so this guy has more minutes. Let's go for him. Alvarez, Foden, all apply. But then my instinct, exactly as you said, is, maybe they'll be a little bit more pragmatic. They'll have new signing. Maybe Kovacic is playing every game through the middle and he's a little bit more defensive minded. So how much will they be better as an attack? Maybe not. So then you're comparing in brackets of Phil Foden and Maddison or, other good picks in that area, even a Jota if you have. So you don't have to jump on them. You can have the luxury of waiting for 2 game weeks and then deciding, because I think if you go for somebody like a Foden or Alvarez, and if De Bruyne's injury is reasonably long-term, we're talking 3-4 months, you have time to go on them. You don't have to be the first one to get their points, because I think their ceilings are a little bit lower than usually we're used to because of Haaland. If there's a goal, Haaland takes the goal. You're looking for an assist and maybe a goal if it's a 4-0 win. And that's essentially your ceiling with these City other guys.
So wait and watch for me. I think you can give it another couple of weeks.
And I just want to mention that, let's say you see a team sheet next week against Newcastle at home and you see Foden not starting, I don't think you can take away anything from the Newcastle at home game. It's the team sheet in the game after that I'm more interested in, because City have a tough fixture and Pep might be more pragmatic in a game like Newcastle, where he might play Kovacic and Rodri together. But after that is Sheffield United away, Fulham at home, West Ham away, Forest at home. So I'm actually more interested in seeing what Pep does in the easier fixtures. Like, I'm actually interested in seeing the Sheffield United away team, seeing what Pep does in a team where he might not require that little bit of pragmatism, and then jumping. So just wanted to say that. Like, I won't be surprised if Foden doesn't play the next game. It's about what happens in the Sheffield United game and seeing that setup.
I think he will, though. It's a bit short of options now.
Yeah. What do you think if you see Guardiola starting the next game? Happy to jump on him game week 3? That's where I am. I don't see a world in which he doesn't start many games. I'm happy to take my time, see 2-3 starts in a row and then jump. Where are you guys on that, Zoph?
I would go for the upside defenders.
Right now, not feeling
the City defense yet, because they do have options. There's rumors Laporte will be off to Saudi, but even then you have Akanji, Ake, Diaz, etc., etc. You pay 5 million for a guy who has upside. For a 6-pointer guy, I just don't feel it right now.
He's a long-term glue guy. I agree, but you don't have to. I mean, I think there will be a trend in a little while after the Chelsea's fixtures go down to go back to City. You know, your comfort blankets, Newcastle, Arsenal, City defenders, and then maybe you can trade off a little bit of upside. Now, I know Pranal doesn't like the idea of selling Chelsea guys, but maybe game week 9 onwards, when you don't have to have a double up, I think people may look at more of the City defenders. I mean, City defense is still what it is, and Guardiola, if he gets those minutes, 5 million is ridiculous.
I'm exactly sitting the opposite of you guys. Like, as much as Estupinan showed, like, my takeaway also from that game is I don't think I can rely on him for clean sheets. And game week 3 and 4, when I'm looking for other defenders as well, like, I'm looking at the right time to jump on Guardiola. I think he's the best defender, and that's where I am with that City defense. I'm looking to jump there earlier and settle that position is where I am. Yeah.
If Diaz is out for longer, maybe. I'm not sure what the length of his injury is. If you have Diaz, Stones, and him fit, I think it's 2 of 3 every game.
Diaz is okay.
He's going to play Ake's position. He's going to play on that side.
On the left.
Yeah, as an inverting defender. And like, Guardiola is top 3 Europe defender. Like, I think he's that good. I don't think his minutes are that questionable. And we've seen it with Pep previously. Like, once a defender sits, he doesn't move around those spots, especially in the early part of the season. Like, what he starts with, he sticks with. Like, in the first 6, 8, 10 weeks. We've seen it last season as well. So I'm not too worried about that, personally.
The problem is you're going to see a lot of sub-ons now with this additional time. So you're never going to get your substitute off for him. That's possibly a change in the macro from last season.
Yeah. That's another thing, actually, that's in my factor when it comes to clean sheets. Like, I'd much rather depend on an elite defense like Manchester City than I'd on the middling sort of defenses. Like, I just think it's a much surer bet for a clean sheet. That's where I am. Like, I'm very hot on City defender and jumping on Guardiola the moment you get an opportunity. That's where I am.
Where, I mean, I guess you can also look at it like this game week, right? A lot of defenders got assists, not clean sheets, and still we got some points. So you could argue, I guess, for me, the answer is simple: fixtures. I mean, as long as the fixtures are good for other attacking defenders, which is the case at the moment, which is Chelsea, Brighton. If it's not, I mean, City's great. And by the way, on Diaz, Zoph, he's going to be back for sure. It was just a concussion that made him miss it. So he'll be back. He may even be back this game week.
I'm glad you mentioned the point on defense, because my early hypothesis is there are going to be much fewer clean sheets this year. I think there are possibly only 2 teams you can say who looked a bit poor in attack. Sheffield United, even Wolves looked pretty decent, right? And I think we need to address that. We thought that Wolves and Forest would be both a bit rubbish defensively. They were both pretty good. Both seemed like pretty competent teams. Even Luton, I thought, were pretty attacking. So in general, I think you have to prioritize your attacking defenders.
No, but to counterpoint that, there was one team that looked very competent in defense, playing a second string defense. That's where I am. Like, they're by far and above the best team in the league. So like who do I trust completely for cleans? City, and nobody else comes close in terms of trust. Chelsea defenders will come into that bracket, sitting on the double pivot and the attacking impetus they offer. You move early on Chelsea because of fixtures, and especially if you're going for a James in addition to a Chilwell. But after that, if you're buying a Chelsea centre back versus a City centre back, like, there's a conversation to be had.
I just think you'll find upside guys in other teams.
Fair. Burnley, though, any takeaways from that first game? They were quite impressive. They can play a bit. I think they're settled in, and they had 3 or 4 debutants. I think Company mentioned in the post-match presser as well. Russ,
They're not getting relegated this year. I mean, there's enough bad teams below them. But we need to be wary because there was this narrative, right? Will they be the Leeds United? I don't think they were like that at all, where they were going gung-ho. Maybe it was the first game. Maybe it was a game where they knew that even if they go gung-ho, they're going to get smacked. So wait and see a little bit. But I think, it's a good team. They know how to pass the ball. They belong to the Premier League. At least that was the first feeling.
Right. Let's go to the other Sunday game, which I think has a few takeaways because a lot of people are going to be targeting Spurs, if not this week, next week onwards for sure. But there's no reason to not target them this week either. I want to mention on those that went Richarlison that, Postecoglou actually mentioned that he wants his team to find Richarlison more. And until and unless Spurs get a striker of the caliber or big name status of Lukaku, I think he is good in that position and don't have any nerves sort of hanging on to your Richarlisons. This is where I am. Like I've seen a lot of people with already saying, we made the mistake going Richarlison over Maddison. I don't think it's a mistake unless they buy a seasoned striker. If they buy like a secondary striker, then you need to worry. I don't think you need to worry. Spurs look good. Spurs gave us exactly what we expected from them in terms of a really good attacking setup. Brentford were expecting that and played on the counter as they soaked the pressure and countered. But Spurs were good. The problem is the quality of the players that are on that Spurs team weren't really that good. And what impressed me is despite that being the case, Spurs look good. So that was my takeaway in terms of more and more the time passes, Spurs are going to be a coherent attacking unit and they will be good for attacking points through the season.
I didn't really like this role for Richarlison though. It feels a bit like putting Rashford through the center. I think he's much more useful out wide. This is not really playing to Richarlison's strengths. I think they do need to sign a centre forward.
He's actually quite suited to be an Ange centre forward. It's just that this game didn't give him the chance. And we're talking about probably the most street smart defense in the league in terms of what Frank does with Brentford. So I don't think you can draw many conclusions from this. I think he'll get his chances. He's done well in preseason against more rubbish opposition, but I just say hold patient until they strike.
I'm not drawing any conclusion as such from game week 1. These are all hypotheses we are framing, right? And over the next 2-3 weeks, we are going to decide whether they're actually true.
That's true. I just wanted to urge Richarlison owners to be patient.
Absolutely. And in fact, as a non-owner of both, I'm still open-minded on where I go in a couple of weeks. I know there's a lot of Maddison was amazing and he was running the show. But again, one game sample, maybe he was given the space and Richarlison was being, in the other game, maybe Richarlison sees the ball more. What I know, and I was tempted with Richarlison a lot, is I know Richarlison will get 1 to 2 big chances a game, given where he's playing, if he continues to play there. And so that is huge for a 7 million midfielder, if you can make space. On the other hand, Maddison will create about 5 chances, maybe 3 big chances a game. So, and he'll be on bonus. He could even be on penalties. That's the other question mark with Spurs, which hasn't been answered yet. And so that will completely, for me, flip where I go. And I'm happy to wait for a week or 2 if I need to make that decision. And actually, a lot of these midfielders will be popular after game week 3. Because then you'll have your, your second Arsenal mid who you may think to ship out because they've had their 2 easy games. You could have your Bruno Fernandes or your second Manchester United midfielder that you can ship out because they actually play each other in game week 4. So you'll see a lot of movement towards Richarlison or Maddison or any other midfielders that are popular then.
Or Richarlison and Maddison. I won't be surprised if people are going both. Both have put their hand up as potentially good picks at the moment is where I am with them. And one point you mentioned the bonus is for Maddison, 1 return could be worth 2 additional or 3 additional points in terms of his role in that Spurs team as well.
As of now, I think my order would be Maddison, Richarlison, and Son would be a distant 4th or 5th. He looked quite poor. I was expecting something big from Son, but early impressions weren't great.
Unless Richarlison completely shits the bed, unless Spurs don't sign a striker, as long as he's playing that wide role, he's not a pick in my opinion. He was just too wide. Ange probably needs to play him centre forward to become an FPL option. Until then, just stay away.
I really hope he does try that. Put Richarlison on the wing and try Son central. I think that would help the team's dynamic more.
Yeah, and just a long shot in this entire system. what really worked on that wing in preseason was Solomon. Just keep an eye on him. Like he could be a pick at some point because I admired Ange taking off Son in the 75th minute, saying you're not working. I don't care if you're the captain. It's not fitting the system. And he seems like a guy that's not afraid to make the big calls.
Or
Yeah.
Perisic even on the left. I mean, he's not playing defender under Postecoglou.
Yeah, playing winger. Exactly. So yeah, wait and watch both picks in midfield. Nobody else has a pick at the moment, and don't touch their defense is what I took away from it.
Udogie looks good, no?
Good bonus also,
But-
good BPS score underlying.
But no clean sheets. Genuinely
slim.
no clean sheets.
Looks slim.
Yeah.
Bissouma
like,
had a
that's my
good game.
take.
I was very impressed with
Yeah.
Bissouma. I know this is not FPL related, but there's a player there.
Yeah, there is. He looks good. They have Baker's obsessed with this winger that they're going to buy. His name is also quite cool. I forget, but it's one of those tricky Saint Max type wingers who Baker thinks is going to be the best player in the world. So just watch out, watch that space for more.
No bias.
Pras, you own Mbuemo, Vissa, Brentford. What do you take from that game?
I don't
And
think we
your
learned-
boy Rico Henry as well.
He had a
What a
beast of a
performance.
game. What a game.
Yeah.
I mean,
Go on,
5
Pras.
at the back helped both of them, right? 5 at the back
Yeah.
helped Henry become more attacking and Mbumo play striker up top. I don't think we learned anything new on Brentford. They did what they did. We knew Mbumo was on penalties. He took an excellent... I mean, the way he took the penalty was you could replace him with an AI image of Tony and you won't know the difference. The same movement to take the penalty kick. He got a big chance as well. So I'm happy. I mean, those are the reasons why I got him. Penalties make a big difference. You know, in my case, I got lucky. I got pens from Pedro and Mbumo. Some weeks you don't get that, but that's exactly what penalties are. And I'm not locked to Mbumo, but I'm happy I went there because that was the spot I was debating between Richarlison or him. And I had money in the bank, so I could have done it. But I'm happy that I went for Mbumo because now the next 3 games are absolutely mint for him. So happy to keep.
This formation,
Do
I
you
think,
think-
gives him more goal threat. I think because when they play a 3, he plays as a striker. Sometimes when they play a 4, he's playing as a winger. So what I
Correct.
saw this game, he had a lot more goal threat than creativity. Something need to monitor going forward for the next
Yeah.
few weeks.
I don't think he sticks with 3 at the back next week. Like, that's
not
where
against
I am.
Fulham.
Not
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah, Fulham who conceded 2.5 XG to Everton, that blew my mind away. That absolutely blew my mind away. Anyway, we'll come back to them later. Zoph, any words on your boy Rico Henry?
Still think he's the best route into the Brentford defense, but overall defensively they didn't look that great. I'm not so convinced on the keeper also. Flecken, he's not as good as Rhea in my opinion, so probably wouldn't go there still.
What impressed me though about Flecken, I'll say, shot keeping, shot saving ability or shot stopping ability is still questionable. But man's got a great ability on the ball. He knows how to distribute. I was impressed. Like, that stood out to me in terms of how easily he can find that ball to Rico Henry on the left or Mbuemo on the right. Like, that's going to be an outlet they're going to regularly use.
Yeah, distribution was great. I mean, we expected that. I mean, this was what I think we talked about in the last pod as well.
Yeah.
That the worry is the shot stopping. And maybe that's also just a short sample size worry.
Right. Where do we go next? Let's talk about the
Arsenal?
last game. Okay, let's talk about Arsenal. Arsenal versus Forest. What do you take away from that stuff?
Arsenal started off very slow, and I went back to a stat. I think even last season, the first game, I think it was against Palace where they had under 1 XG. Not a very exciting, entertaining game normally. And all our Arsenal fans also told us, right, don't expect them to start off as a 3+ XG team. So part of it was Arsenal not clicking. Forest were very well organized. We expected them to be a bit ropey, not so much. Martinelli quite effective on the left, but more wide than I would have liked. Not a lot of goal threat. In Saka's goal was a bit of a worldie, but not really much we can take from this right now because I think the shape was very specific to what they wanted to do. I think Havertz also is much more suited in midfield. I think I like Nketiah as an option, but again, you never know. Against Palace, he might go with Havertz again up top. Very horses for courses, and I don't think they're, like I mentioned early on, they're the team we should always triple up like Liverpool. I kind of take that back now. I'd see rotation in this team going forward.
And also, it was a proper deep block that Forest played. Forest was set up to frustrate Arsenal. And, 3 new players in that team, new shape.
But
It's gonna
second
take a
half
while
was
to gel.
wild though. Once Elanga came on, the entire profile
Yeah.
of the game changed. So impressed with him.
Just an outlet on the counter, right? Like Arsenal were always there to take if you have decent counter-attacking player in that team. That's the thing with Forest. But one learning from this is that I was debating the Johnston versus Turner decision in game week 2. I saw enough from Forest, and especially in terms of Turner's shot-stopping ability, to give him a shot against
Looks a
Sheffield
good
United.
keeper.
That's where looks a good keeper. That's where I am. Pras?
I mean, the thing with Arsenal, just one thing to remember is they had 4 new players, right?
Exactly.
You had Timber playing, Havertz playing, and Nketiah I also put in a new player category because he's not part of the system, the core system. And who was the 4th one? Who else did they sign?
Timber.
Timber was there, Rice was there, and Havertz was there. So those 3. So it's completely new. The midfield is new, and so I just think give them a little bit more time than you would expect. So they will come into it as a second best team or second best attack. But yeah, I mean, nothing new as such that we learned that we didn't know. What I would say is when the tougher game comes, which is now Crystal Palace away, I would think they don't start Nketiah. Speculation, obviously, but I think they will go back to type where you may see Havertz up top, like they did against Man City, or you could see Trossard playing false 9. So I think maybe that's a little bit more fluid and it works.
Yeah, just a note to people with twitchy fingers out there. I don't think we've seen enough to make any sort of decisions. And the only decision I'd make is I'd hold my assets for a Fulham team that conceding 2.5 XG to Everton. You want to hold your Arsenal attacker for that game week 3 game. So just write it out until then and then make your decisions.
Definitely.
We can skip Bournemouth, West Ham. Let's talk about Brighton before shifting to Manchester United.
Let's talk about Bournemouth, West Ham. We spoke about it a little. I think it's a little bit of a conversation for those who own Salah and are considering captaining Salah. So that's the only conversation I want to talk about. I've given my point of view. Zoph, would you swerve on, would you think twice or would you roll the dice? Imagine you had Salah in your team. What do you do?
If I had it, I'd stick to the plan.
Yeah. Pras?
No, I mean, I'm going to say it's not even close. And I don't generally have an opinion like that. I don't think it's close. Salah is the better captain by a little distance, not a big distance, but a little. Newcastle is a good defense. So I expect City to win, but maybe score 2 max. So you have the upside of Salah scoring 5. I mean, not Salah, but Liverpool scoring 5. So you have to go for Salah.
Yeah. And I do want to say that you monitor Solanke and Brooks, who looked quite intriguing. And just a point note on West Ham, Moyes mentioned that he might consider playing Jared Bowen as a striker this season. So, that's like, he already was playing close to goal. This is added confirmation bias. He looks like he's back to his year before last self. So a good spot to monitor for that midfield.
Move on to Brighton.
Yep.
Yeah, sure.
Looked quite good. Very open though in midfield, like we mentioned earlier. Pedro was very attacking. I did not like watching that game as a non-Pedro owner. Very good big chance early on. The penalty, little bit dodgy, and I think in general, bit weird the whole penalty thing this weekend. Some I thought should have been given and some vice versa. We'll talk about it when we get to Manchester United. I guess certain stadiums get penalties more so than others.
It is what it is. It has been the case for a long time.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, but Brighton, I think Mitoma was a bit unlucky not to get more. Stationed quite wide, didn't really get into the box much, but created 5 chances. And generally quite involved. I'm hoping Ferguson starts over Welbeck. I think that would be better for all our Brighton assets.
Agreed. I think we all wish Ferguson started more, and not only for his prospects, as you said, for others around him. And I think it will eventually happen. He just likes the work rate of a Welbeck, at least to start out the games and then finish off. I think we'll see that and then transition over the season to Ferguson starting more. But yeah, I think Brighton, this was a game that we expected them to score a lot of goals, and they did. It was an unlucky penalty to give away. And in fact, that Dan Burn penalty created a wrong precedent for the rest of the penalties, where people said if this was a penalty, then others should have been as well. And so this was the issue. Otherwise, from Brighton's perspective, they're not now signing Kudus. So this is at least what we're hearing. Maybe he's going to West Ham. So that could have implications on Solly March being a decent asset as well for the rest of the season. But other than that, I think Pedro was the news that this guy looks good.
I want to urge some caution because Luton were bad. Like Luton did not look good. I mean, they tried to play football, but they didn't look good. The one thing I want to add is like until the 60th, 65th minute, it was kind of close and tight. It wasn't like Brighton were blowing Luton off or they had many chances that they missed, etc. Except for the Pedro chance in the first 5th minute or something of that. Brighton didn't create that much. Then they got the second goal and then the game blew open in the last 30 minutes. They created maybe more than 50% of their XG is where I am. So game state did play a part in terms of assessing that Brighton position. I am still not confident that this Brighton is going to be the Brighton of last year. I have full faith in De Zerbi, but like that midfield isn't as convincing to me this year. And I'm in terms of swerving spots in my team at the moment. Like I'm monitoring Brighton closely. I don't have the same faith I did last year.
Good short-term hold. You play for Wolves, you play for West Ham, and then again, game week 4 reassess.
Exactly. That's where I am. I think they need better midfielders is where I am.
The picture changes also after game week 4 because then Champions League, so not the European competition comes into it, right?
Yeah.
So that also brings in rotation with it.
And he's going to prioritize that competition, right? It's not going to be like how maybe the top 4 clubs treat when they're in the Europa League, where they have a second squad and they play that. I think he's going to, it's like we had Sam talk to us when he came on the podcast in preseason. He's like, they're going to treat this as a big event, and rightly so, because it's such a big thing for them. So that's doubts about Brighton is where I am. Though Pedro looks a great enabler, I'm not worried about his minutes at the moment. Mitoma looks like a good hold, but keep scouting your options.
Morris is a good hop off. I think beyond that, I think Luton will create chances.
Yeah, he looked a handful. I'll give you that. He looked a handful.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
Everton Fulham, anything to add?
I mean, what is up with Sean Dyche, man?
Crazy game.
What a performance that was. Like having the midfield he did, creating chance after chance after chance. Like I think the takeaway is that Fulham are probably the best team to target for your attackers at the moment. Because if I mentioned it already 4 times on the podcast, so that's my main takeaway.
Paulinia is also linked with Liverpool.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's an interesting one. If they are able to take him off Fulham, like Fulham are screwed. Absolutely screwed. Like whatever little defensive stability they had was because of him. And even then they were probably one of the poorest defenses last season. Then I'm worried. I would be worried for them.
Mitrovic is likely off as well. Even though he's been dilly-dallying with the move, I think he's going to go. So we do expect them to be a little bit better. Maybe they're a bit rusty, but definitely a team to target. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Everton looked good, actually. I mean, people will look at the result and think that, I mean, not defensively necessarily, but as a team, they looked very, very good.
Even defensively, they were good. What happened is because they didn't score for so long, I guess a lot of frustration sort of keeps them, right? You score a couple of the chances, go 2-0 up, 1-0 up, the entire tempo of the game changes. The fact that you're chasing the goal and they got hit with a sucker punch.
Agreed.
Yeah. Right. Let's move on to Crystal Palace versus Sheffield United. Sheffield United showed to me that you can give Turner a shot this week. They don't look like they're offering much at the moment. And Eze looked incredible as a pick. I'm worried though, because Liverpool, while they are linked with Paulinia, are also linked with Doucouré or Kouyaté.
All their players, even Anderson and Guehi, are linked with moves. So the transfer window is very crucial for Palace.
Exactly. Like my faith in Johnston came from my faith in that spine of 5 players that I mentioned in terms of the central defenders as well as the central midfielders. That's broken, I'd worry a little. I don't think we can go beyond this pod without mentioning what, in my opinion, was my favorite moment of the week. I mean, boy, Hodgson, man. Like, he's got a fighter in him, man. It was incredible to see, man. I hope I can be remotely half as good if I am his age. That was incredible to see. I think he would have given him a run for the money. I don't know who that player was from Sheffield United, but he would have given him a run for the money. Yeah, Max Lowe. That was incredible to watch. But yeah, man, defensively looks solid. It's exactly the kind why Arsenal are going to get a similar sort of challenge in game week 2. Because I expect Palace to play sort of a low block. It's just not that they're playing Schlupp, who's also defensively minded. What this means is that Eze is the new Zaha, essentially. in terms of given license to attack and do what he wants. Out of the 25 chances that they created, he was involved in 15 of them, whether he created or shot himself. Going to be a talisman in this Palace team and is a quality player.
Absolutely. If he gets a penalty, the narrative is completely different, right? There's other penalty takers who looked less attacking, but got points, and so people are very happy with them. As a will be an incredible pick. Now, if you think about if you went for him, then you got unlucky in this week, and you can be hopeful of points. But I think if you haven't gone for him, now he goes into this run of Arsenal, Brentford, and then Villa, Man United in the next 5. I know there's Wolves at home and Fulham at home in that period as well, but it's not ideal, and there's so many other 6.5 picks that you don't have to go for him now. But I think if you have him, then he's definitely a great pick to hold.
There is an alternate narrative to that. Like, if you ask me from an attacking point of view, Brentford, Wolves, Villa, Fulham isn't bad for any attack. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
like
it's fine. Like, you can go for him. I wouldn't put anybody against. Like, Arsenal, I get, is a tough fixture, but the 4 after that, even United, I'd be comfortable playing as a.
Correct. But, basically it's relative, right? Then you compare Brentford have Fulham, Crystal Palace and Bournemouth in the next 3.
Yeah. Exactly. I think maybe you take a call after this week because I want to see how Mbeumo looks in a 3, like Zoph mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Move on to the next one. The league's top of the league, Newcastle.
Pras, thoughts from the game.
Good team, man. I mean, we didn't learn much. Botman, our favorite 4.5 assisted, showed the potential that some of us believed in him. And I think Newcastle, that was a fantastic performance. We all remember the hammering they took to Villa, but that was away. At home, Newcastle is a good team, and we should remember this, that they're a good team. No matter who they play, they're a good team.
I agree with that, but I just want to point out that Villa is exactly the kind of team in terms of doing what they did that Newcastle would like to play against.
Oh yeah, a high line, not changing, not basically being pragmatic after being 4 goals down. I agree, of course.
Like they just will say, come. We've got these fast guys on both sides, and my striker's really fast. Come, we're going to play a ball out. Like that's essentially, and we're going to press and play that ball. And Emery just didn't learn. So that's where we are. In terms of learning, in terms of even going down on Aston Villa, I don't think you can take much from that. I think Emery is a good coach.
Yeah.
They will come back, rightly so. In terms of learning, I don't think there's much to learn or take away from this game.
I agree. I mean, in terms of Newcastle, just for a moment, I mean, in terms of their attack, because people will get tempted 5 goals against Villa, right? The problem with Newcastle will be that they have now bought to engage in a long campaign of European football, cup football. They'll have Harvey Barnes and Gordon playing on the left. They'll have Isak and Wilson, who will only play up top. So it'll only be one of the 2. We won't get Isak plus Wilson anymore. At least doesn't look like it. You have Almiron and Willock on the right, and you have got a good midfield sort of helping that. So I don't think their attackers will be straightforward to pick at any point unless there's an injury. That was one takeaway. The other one is they're buying as well still in defense. So, we've seen Livramento they've bought. They're also linked with who's the Lewis Hall from Chelsea. If he joins as left back, I mean, that'll be interesting. So wait and watch, but good team.
Yeah, investable FPL options are a bit tricky now.
I mean, Pras is very hot on one of the defenders outside of Botman as well. Like, everybody's talking about the sexy Chelsea assets, but, Rolls-Royce Trippier, Game Week 4 is going to be on everybody's watch list.
I know. I mean, it's basically one of those classic things, right? Everyone's forgotten about the best defender last season. And you remember those Fraser charts that we discussed. I mean, there's one guy who has the best or second best XG conceded in the team and also the most chances created. It's basically Trent playing in a good team for 1 million less. So I think, if you wanted to be different, there are opportunities that present themselves in different points. Like some people have gone for Salah now. They will be Trippier in Game Week 4 as an opportunity. That is an excellent opportunity that not many can go to. And I don't know if I will be able to, because if I use my money in the bank to go Pedro to Jackson, I won't have the money for Trippier. But if I don't, then I think that's certainly an opportunity.
Trent playing in a good team, cut deep, Pras. I just wanted to say that cut deep. It's like Trent playing in a good. Trippier's like Trent playing in a good team. That one cut deep.
I said good defense, or did I say good team?
Good team.
You said good defense.
You said good.
Okay, I think good defense. I think we've already lost enough Liverpool subscribers today. No, Liverpool are a good team.
But even Tonali, right? Such an upgrade on that third midfielder spot that Newcastle struggled with last season. He was great. I mean, as good as debut as it can get. Like, really, really impressed me. I wish one of their left wingers becomes first choice, because it's such a, like, if Barnes is first choice, I want to jump there as soon as I can. Like, he's exactly my kind of FPL pick. But it's just a great meta conversation to have, and I think I'm hoping that's how the season plays out. Is that I think it might be a season where the template will be challenged throughout the season. Like, there is always going to be 4 or 5 of these slightly not well-owned players that are going to hang around that probably are going to be really good picks. And I don't think we're going to be straight-jacketed to move. So it makes for a very interesting season. And I think it's going to come down to judging what you see. If you're going for something different, right? Like, there's last 3 years of data that you can use. And then there is the last 3 matches of data that you can see. And if you're going to form conclusions looking at 3 matches of data, there are opportunities that are going to be presented so that you can get ahead in the game.
Yep.
Like,
with Kane injured and now KDB also, sorry, Kane has gone and KDB injured, only 2 players now above 10 million in the game. So it's very easy to build a team. Once you pick only one of those guys, you can pretty much build a team to get all the other players you want. So that in that sense, you're right. The template is very easy to move away from it and still have very good picks.
Yeah. And even just generally, like, there could be a world where you guys are sitting here game week 3 after 4 Salah goals in the last 2 matches, thinking how you can get more Salah. Like, I still think I haven't seen anything as convincing from all your premium lights for them to challenge what a Salah can offer in terms of attacking reliability. Like, that was also a takeaway from this. So there is a world that could happen.
Agreed.
Should we talk about Watkins?
Yeah, I was going to ask you that.
So I thought Watkins, I was very impressed with his link up with Diaby, who looks an incredible player. I was very impressed with what I saw. I don't think he's going to take a lot of time getting adjusted. They are bringing some new players. They've been linked with Zaniolo and I think somebody else. So they are reinforcing. And I think he was very unlucky not to get an assist at least. The chance with Cash missed later on. So nothing would put me off, like, look to sell Watkins. But I am still looking to sell him around game week 3. Probably for Jackson. But this week is a good fixture. He's my vice captain this week against Everton.
What do you think about captaincy for those that don't believe in Erling?
It's difficult because this week a lot of the big teams have away fixtures and they're not as great. I think you'd probably look at Watkins.
Like, it's Watkins, exactly. So what do you think about the Watkins versus Erling shout? Do you trust him as yet as much?
No, I don't trust him. I'm forever scarred.
Yeah.
He needs to start scoring hat tricks. He doesn't. He scores a goal. I mean, Kane light, going back to the conversation. So he'll get you. I wouldn't put good money, but I would say it's a good chance that he gets a goal and 3 bonus in this game. Whether he does more than that or not, I don't know. But you can see a Watkins goal against Everton. But then Haaland could do more. So I want, if I'm going against a Haaland, for the guy to have that potential to beat Haaland by 6, 8, 10 points, which Salah can, but I don't think Watkins is there yet.
Yeah, and Diaby is firmly on the watch list as well. Both looked good picks. I don't think much has changed. Both look good picks.
Absolutely. And I think this guy Zaniolo is basically the Buendia replacement. He'll play off the left. So they should be fine. I mean, Gianni is the Serie A expert in terms of our, he says he's a good player. So I think he's one to monitor.
Move on to the final game.
Both of you are minded to make that switch to Jackson in game week 3 as things stand?
Unless I see any noise in the transfer market where we are definitively linked for a striker, I'll be making the move.
Pras?
I'm open. So for me, basically, when I'll come to my team, I'll explain I have this 2 million in the bank. So I can just keep João Pedro and get Alvarez. So if there is that one thing which if I wanted to go for an Alvarez, that could be an option. But I think most likely my base case transfer will be straight swap Pedro to Jackson.
Right. The last game, the Monday night game. Pras, takeaways from the United game.
Terrible. Absolutely pathetic performance. But I would say, much like how game week 1 can be, it could be just a one-off. You come away with a 1-0 victory and you get told off, you get the hair dryer treatment from the manager and you get a much better performance against Spurs. And, if Man United beat Spurs 2-0, we're all talking very differently in terms of what we think about Man United, what we think about Spurs. So cautious, but if you're only talking game week 1, very worrying. Gave away a lot of chances, Bruno and Mount were both too advanced for my liking, where Casemiro is basically isolated in midfield and Rashford up top doesn't work. It hasn't worked in the past. And so what we were doing is playing out wide, where Anthony and Garnacho were a little bit more wasteful as well. It just wasn't a great performance, and Wolves were very, very good.
Yeah, I mean, when Van Bissaka is the only player that comes out of after the game looking like he did well. Nobody else really had a good game. Like none of our other players had a good game, and that speaks a lot. And you wouldn't, again, I'm with you. I wouldn't draw conclusions after this game. We've seen us struggle similarly at the start of last season, and then come back. And we know that Ten Hag's a good, reliable coach. I'd want to see maybe a couple more such performances before I get worried about United. I'm not as yet. And again, as the same thing that I urged with Richarlison and Maddison is what I'd urged if you've doubled up on United attack, is that be patient. I mean, I don't see a world in which that Spurs versus United game doesn't have 3+ goals. Like, it's just set up to be exactly that kind of game based on how Ange plays. It's sort of like the United Villa setup. They both will enjoy playing against each other. So I think it looks good for attacking points in that game, not the same for defensive points.
You need to play Rashford wide. I think to exploit the same spaces that Henry was running into.
Yeah. Yep. Just again, have to add, I mean, it was a blatant penalty. Wolves were robbed, and how? Like, they deserve to come out of that game with 3 points, not 1, and
not 0.
Not 0. So that's where I am in terms of performance. But we do need to talk about Wolves also in terms of how perception changes in terms of what we view of them. And I was talking to Alon before the game, and that's the thing with Wolves. Like, Wolves are a team that has a really good first 11. Their bench is rubbish, but the first 11 is pretty decent. And, if O'Neill does the same thing that he did, I mean, getting them to play like this in 5 days was quite incredible. And if he does what he did with Bournemouth last season, then our perception with them will need to change. That said, they need to know how to finish. Like their attackers are just not capable of finishing. I don't have confidence in their players and in their finishing ability, but you talk about an out for Pedro. Should I need one off? Like, Cunha is also added to my shortlist in my head.
Yeah, but then I just don't strike me as a clean sheet banker anymore. And as I just scroll through the teams, there are very few that are now in the Premier League. You look at the fixture. Let's say today I'm playing Pickford home against Wolves. Maybe prior to game week 1, I'm like, yeah, clean sheet banker. But that's sort of realigning in my head now.
Unless you own a City defender.
Probably. No, obviously, the top guys are fixture proof, but against when you're playing against teams in mid-table and all that stuff, I'm not seeing that many clean sheets this season.
Fair. Right. Let's move on to our teams. I think anything else?
Just on Arsenal, just on Man United, just macro, right? Yeah. I mean, I think we're definitely all in the camp. Hold on. And, like example, I'll use my team. I can do Rashford and Bruno to Richarlison and Salah this week. Obviously for a hit, but I have the money. But I'm firmly off the camp that you give them another couple of weeks before you do anything, regardless of how tempting it is to go to a Maddison who's rising, or Foden if he's starting again on the weekend. We agree, or do you think Bruno?
Let's touch upon that macro point. We are talking about so many teams have good fixtures in game week 3, so it's less essential than it always is to save a transfer now in game week 2. So I think if you can see a visible upgrade in your team, there's nothing wrong with moving.
But it isn't a visible upgrade, is my point. Yeah. Unless somebody's injured or out of the team.
You don't have enough information to make that conclusion. That's what I am.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like the move that I would unquestionably make is jump on a Chelsea wing back. That's the short move in my head this week.
Yeah.
Completely agree there. And for De Bruyne owners, who would you possibly move him to?
Salah. Take a hit and get Salah.
Oh, take the hit and get Salah because you have to raise money. Then I would probably say Maddison. If I had to pick one midfielder you'd move to now, free up some money. That's probably where I'd go. It's obviously a week early, but I think
a good shout.
That's probably where I'd move.
Yeah, that's a good shout.
Plus, you want to talk us through this table you sent me, this 11FI?
Yeah, so model? Another nice table by 11FI. And I just want to give an overview of basically how models think about game week 1. So, one caveat is, at the beginning of the season, we use a lot of eye test because things change. What we knew until game week 38 things are changing now because there's new managers like Postecoglou. There's changes in team formations like Chelsea. So things change. So eye test is the most important that it can be. But I think this is also a good overview of how models change their perception on teams depending on what they've seen in game week 1. So for example, if you look at just based on game week 1 data, 11FI has shared here what has he changed in his model based on that in his attack. And in his attack, the first thing he's changed is actually Newcastle. He's bumped up a little bit more. Now, you can call this as reactionary. They've scored 5 goals against Villa, but this is how models work. I mean, next game, if they blank it's Man City, but let's say in the next 2-3 games, they score 1 goal, then that will be adjusted downwards. And this is effectively how these models work, review, the scout one. And so this is a good way to think about those things. I think Man City, even though we think Haaland did really well, they actually disappointed in terms of their attack. And this was something that, aligns with what we were talking about, where without De Bruyne, were they as good? Liverpool, they looked good in the beginning, but maybe it, Chelsea just came into that game a lot more because of that defensive or that midfield strength. And so their model adjustment was a little bit lower than what we expected. Arsenal also lower. So, we're not going to go through every single team here, but this is just to give you an idea of what we learned. In terms of defense, we saw Man City going up, Chelsea going up, Brentford going up a little bit more again, even though they conceded 2 goals. And so it basically gives you that team strength. And obviously in the overall strength, you see a big hit on Man United, even if it's based on one game, but it's a big hit that they see on that performance.
And just worth mentioning, just look at the adjustments in terms of the percentages of the actual numbers. They're minor adjustments.
Very minor.
So you need to understand that also in terms of how these models adjust to the changes that happen in the week. It's not a heavy reactionary adjustment. It's just a minuscule one. So like the strength of the long-term data remains the strength of the long-term data. That's all.
Plus a Discord plug before our teams.
Yeah, so our Discord is up and running as it is always, and we started our league. The mini league mate dossier is coming. So I know some of the people have asked, and we're just trying to iron out final things with them. And so we'll get in terms of where we are in our various leagues. LR is actually, are you 5th? I think you dropped a little bit after the Man United clean sheet, but LR is in our top 5 for the month. So we're up and running for our August mini league. And of course,
going for it.
Yeah, go for it. And then, of course, there was a bench boost as well who scored over 100 points, I think Amol. So we will talk about these things as we get closer to the month on who's in the running for winning the monthly prizes, as well as obviously the yearly cup that started. And so, yeah, very excited. And please join if you can. You're still eligible to take part in the yearly one. And of course, not the August one, but from September onwards, you can take part in the August and in the September competition and the monthly competitions.
And when did the cup competition start? That's also what
I think that's when the Premier League Cup starts, right? Or the official FPL Game Cup starts. So that will be much later. I think game week 24, if I remember from last year.
Got it. Worth mentioning. And also just, we've got about 1,100 people watching us. As always, we're really, really grateful for all the support that you've shown us, especially this week, because of events that happen. Make sure you're hitting the like and subscribe button. We're always, always grateful for support. We're here to do great content, and that's what we just really want to do. And all the help you can give us is always acknowledged, appreciated, and we are deeply grateful for it.
Move on to our teams. Plus, your team up first with the double Chelsea defense.
Look at that sexy double Chelsea defense.
Look at that blue. Okay, I have played Turner in goal, and I think this will be popular because everyone, Pickford, Onana, and I think Flecken, as well as Johnston, have trickier fixtures. And I think given where Sheffield United were, I think it's worth a punt. So starting Turner, then in defense, I'm starting James, Chilwell, and Estupinian. I'm still debating between James and Saliba, but I think I'm likely to go James just for that attacking upside. Both have semi-harder fixtures. I'm not expecting clean sheets for either Arsenal or Chelsea necessarily, or they have equal likelihood of clean sheets. And then midfield, I'm not touching yet. I've got Saka, Bruno, Rashford, Martinelli, and Mbumo. And attack, I've got João Pedro and Haaland. So everyone has decent enough fixtures this week that I hold. I keep my 2 million in the bank next week. And I can go Pedro up to Jackson next week. I can go Archer up to Alvarez. I can go Estupinian up to Trippier. Lots of options, and I can go where I want next week.
Just a question, Pras. If I gave you an extra free transfer this week, what move would you make?
Extra free transfer, I would go. Tough question, man.
Pedro to Jackson.
No, Pedro's fine this week.
I know, but
I don't think
Pedro to
away to West
Watkins.
Ham is that much
I know,
of
but
a
if
big
if
issue.
you'll be burning a transfer otherwise, I can't see any other visible upgrade you would do.
Maybe Bruno to
Watkins.
Jota. Bruno to
Or
Jota.
Pedro to Watkins, maybe. Just generally, because I want to think about the opportunities you would take if you weren't patient, is the thought process. Here, that's
I
all.
don't have money for Pedro to Watkins, and that's how I was
Yeah.
able to afford James. So I don't have money for that. I would actually, if you gave me a free transfer, again, sorry, going to be very boring. I would go Saliba to someone else, like maybe a
Oh,
City defender.
if
Sorry.
I'm giving you an extra free transfer, then also you'd play the
I
long term.
did say I can go Bruno to Jota as the upside move.
All right, cool.
I don't know. I have
Yeah.
a feeling Jota might not start. I'm feeling this is a Darwin game. Pure
Yeah,
guess.
yeah. Worth mentioning, I was in Josh's DMs. He was the correspondent who does incredible work for Anfield Rap. I asked him what he thinks about the lineup this week, and he has the same sentiment as you do. He does think that Jones comes into midfield. He expects it to be a Darwin game, and he thinks it could be competition for spots for reduced spots now that he's expecting Jones to play in midfield and Mac and Sobo to be the 2/8s. So it's just a lot of competition in those spots. Jota looks more questionable. Gakpo looks more questionable. He thinks it could be a Darwin game, but he's not sure. So he's like, just swerve all four of them. And what we saw in the game is also 60 to 70 minutes, like not many minutes for all of them. So including Salah.
I'm interested
So
to watch how
that's
that Salah thing wears out. I don't even think Salah is going to be 90 minutes every game now. Something to
Yeah.
watch out for.
Yep.
This is my team. Turner, Estupinan, Chilwell, Saliba, Rashford, Saka, Martinelli, Mitoma, Bruno, Haaland cap. With Watkins, only just Baldock as a playing sub, Pickford on the bench. Pretty standard.
Any temptations at all, or happy to just save and watch?
1 million in the bank, so there's not much. Like I can pretty much go anywhere, but my most likely would be making my move next week. I don't mind moving one of the United guys next week, even if they play Forest, for somebody like Maddison. But most likely, I'd like to keep the powder dry for Watkins to Jackson.
Same Saliba to James not tempting you?
Not this week, no.
Not this week. Cool.
I mean, you have money for Mitoma to Maddison as well.
I do. But I
Next
think
week.
Mitoma might be a better FPL asset than Bruno based on the limited things that I've seen. But again, all hypothesis at this stage.
If same question as Pras, if you had an extra free transfer, just for fun, not for long-term planning, what would you do?
Bruno to Maddison
This week.
this week.
Got it.
So I'll be
Cool.
burning the transfer otherwise. And I think in general, for pure FPL wise, I think Maddison looks to me a better asset. He's going to be more involved in the percentage of goals that Spurs score.
Yep.
Is it you?
I don't know. This isn't my team. This is
Sorry.
double Chelsea.
I might have sorted the wrong one. Do you have your team then on you?
Yeah, I have my team on me. I have one second. Let me just go to the big team page. Yes, I've got Turner as my keeper. I've got Chilwell, Saliba, and Estupinan as my defenders. In midfield, I've got Salah, who's my captain at the moment and likely going to be my captain. Rashford, Saka, Maddison, and Mitoma. And up front, I have Haaland and Pedro.
There you go.
Yeah, that's my team. Yeah, there you go. Looking to save the transfer. There's not much I can do with this team at the moment. And I think the big decision is going to come for me next week in terms of how long do I want to persist with a tight team and Mo Salah. So it
What's
depends
your
on the
answer
enablers.
to the question you were asking? What transfer would you make?
This week? Maybe Saka to...
Oh, that's not what I
Jota.
expected.
Saka to a Diaz or something of that
See,
sort.
this is the thing with the Salah team, right? I mean, he has to generate funds. He has to sell.
Saka to Jota doesn't really generate. I would just, that's probably one of the lead. Saka's for me absolute glue guy. So that's very interesting to hear you say that.
I see it as a free hit move this week. What would I do? Like that's the idea. Or maybe like Mitoma to Mbuemo, who has a much better fixture this week. Something of that sort, probably.
I do Bumo to this guy Diaby.
Mitoma to Diaby, you mean?
Sorry, Mitoma to Diaby.
Yeah. Actually, that's a good shot. Yeah, I'd probably do something like that.
Villa has the
But I
best
see it as
fixture
a-
after Liverpool, I think, this week.
Agreed.
Yep.
Cool. Let's wrap
And-
up.
And where do you go next week, LR? It'll depend on, because I mean, same question to you. I should have asked you, Zoph, because Watkins is going to score. It's going to be hard to sell. And same question for you. Salah's going to score. It's going to be hard to sell.
I have no problem
So-
selling because you don't buy players for the goals they've already scored. You buy players for the goals they're going to score. Jackson's run is there.
Yeah, exactly. I'm also eyeing up Jackson. And so, Pras, that question in terms of which of these really good midfielders do I have to downgrade is going to come to me next week. And that's why I've been thinking about Colville too, as an option to find funds, because I want to see how long, if there's an opportunity to write Salah as a differential.
Fair.
Because what's happened now is that Villa played the way they did, and Liverpool play Villa game week 4 at home as well. So that's also a game that's at
They
the back
play
of
the
my
mighty
mind.
Newcastle away.
Yeah,
Game 3 as well.
game week 3. So it's just a thought in my head. I'm happy to monitor. I'm still open to selling Salah blindly and just downgrade him to a midfielder that looks good, maybe Richarlison, and upgrade one of my defenders to James, or upgrade not Pedro even, maybe my 4.5 attacker to who are we talking about? Jackson, and chill. Like, that's what I can do next week also. So let's see.
Let's wrap up, guys.
Right.
Yep.
Thank you again for being with us this week. Make sure you're hitting the like and subscribe buttons. I mean, the number of people to the like ratio and the subscribe ratio generally on our podcast isn't very high. So make sure you're just clicking a few buttons. We'd be helpful. I do this every week. Zoph, maybe you should do it so they'll listen to you.
Like and subscribe, please.
What I
Yeah,
was going to
sports
say is the people who listen to us on podcast, take out some time and come on YouTube and subscribe, or put a like on the video, because you guys, I mean, you enjoy it, but we never get anything back in terms of, your love for the YouTube content. So please make sure you do that if you can.
Yeah. And you also told me from Fest that there's a lot of content creators that actually watch this podcast. Feel free to share our podcast on Twitter, guys. We'd be grateful.
Yes, indeed.
Cheers.
Fantastic, guys. Another weekend of football to come. I think we'll have a much better data pool as we go on. So looking forward to it.
I can't wait for it.
Early
Genuinely
shout.
Can't wait for the
Early predictions: Spurs United.
2-2.
2-2. Yeah, there you go.
We know our clubs.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I think Chelsea West Ham. I'm expecting maybe a 1-1, maybe 2-1 win to us. Optimistic.
Yeah. Your team is in a good place off. I am expecting a top 3 finish from Chelsea. That's my early hot take.
Let's
Dude,
go.
we will miss out on top 4 if they finish top 4.
Yeah, but that's just the managers, the lack of Europe, and the team that they have in place. Like, the only questionable positions in their team are their wide attackers and how they
Even the striker,
handle...
bro. The striker also, let's say now
Yeah.
Jackson goes down next game. Broya is still ages away. You'd be playing Sterling as false nine.
The spine of the team is great. It's about that front three and whether they're able to generate something. That's the questionability with Chelsea at the moment.
Cool. See you guys next week. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.
See you.
Take care, guys.